Hello, and welcome to week 73, book 73, A Personal Matter by Kenzaburo Oe. Um, Oe is an author who I have never read before and I am not familiar with. And I picked this up at Barnes& and Noble about a month or two ago, I don't know, just to do it. I don't know why I did. Um, Probably because I recognized his name as a author I had not read. Uh, he's also the Nobel Prize winner of literature, 1994, in Japan, Japanese writer, uh, and he is known for being very personal and very brash. His work does not really exemplify some of what we normally expect from Japanese literature. He takes a lot from the West and a lot from uh, the Western tradition of the novel and that kind of thing. So, um, what is this about? Personal matter. Well, this is a very personal story. It's about a young man, 28, whose wife is giving birth to their first child, who happens to be a son. And his son is born with a brain hernia, a growth outside of his head. When did he write this? The edition I have was published in 1969, but I don't trust that as it's a Japanese publication. And let's check that out. Now, Oe only died in 2023. So, A Personal Matter was originally published in 1964. I thought it was a little bit earlier than 69, 64, basically. So, uh, it tells the story of this young man who's, like I said, whose child has this brain growth. It's called a hernia, a brain hernia, and what the doctors suspect is that part of this infant's brain has grown into this, has escaped from his skull into this growth, into this tumor outside, not protected, and so it's just there hanging out basically with a thin skin covering it. Uh, Very delicate and dangerous, and they keep saying this child will grow up to be a vegetable if it grows up at all. And so the young man is unsure what to do. And what he ends up doing to a large part of this novel is trying to run away from this and escape this. He essentially abandons his wife and goes and lives with a girlfriend who he starts to have quite a bit of sex with. And they eventually come up with a plan to let this baby die because that's what he thinks is going to be best for himself, for his wife, for everybody involved. Just let this baby die. And so they keep trying to cause this to happen by starving the baby and this sort of thing, and the baby doesn't die. They eventually take it to an abortionist, and they're going to have him kill the baby, and then he goes and rescues the child and says, "No, I'm not going to do this," because he realizes that he doesn't want to be the kind of person who runs away from responsibilities. That's all he's been doing here. He's run away from his responsibilities, and other things happen to him. But the main character, Bird, is just, he's not a very likable person, and he makes a lot of decisions that seem selfish and self-centered and not very good. And in the very end, when he does decide that he will take care of the child, which, by the way, is not really much of a surprise if you know anything about Oe's life. Oe's story here, Personal Matter, is actually his own story to some extent. Now, I don't know about the girlfriend thing. I don't know about the exact diagnosis that his son had. I don't know about those things. but the broad general strokes of it, of a young man dealing with his firstborn child being born disabled, is in fact exactly what happened to OE. His first child was disabled, and he did have to come to understanding of that. Now, here's the amazing thing: his son grew up to be a composer, and you can go on YouTube now, and you can look up Hikari Oe, Hikario, Hikari Oe, and you will find compositions that his son wrote. And his son was disabled, nonverbal, autistic, not doing a whole lot. And then one day, because Kenzaburo decided to spend time with his son, he noticed that his son really responded to music. And so he encouraged this and developed this, and his son actually began to compose music and has become a well known composer. Now, none of this is in this book. That all happens much later than when this was written, and much later than when this was lived by OE. The time when this was written, this was a child that was unknown, but likely to have a low IQ, likely to be of, you know, to be a burden, but at the same time, something of a blessing. Now, there's a way in which I don't know what to make of this book because it is an interesting book, but it does get a little preachy in a couple of points. You know, um, towards the end. I mean, it was the end. I mean, there's a break here. He leaves in a taxi to go and save the baby from the abortionist, and then we get this at the end. It was the end of autumn when Bird came downstairs after saying goodbye to the surgeon. His parents in law greeted him with a smile in front of the intensive care ward. His wife stood between them with her baby in her arms. Congratulations, Bird, his father in law called. He looks like you know. In a way, Bird said with reserve, because that had been one of the issues. The child did not look human. He keeps referring it to a monster throughout the book. A week after the operation, the baby had looked almost human. The following week, it had begun to resemble Bird. That fault in the baby's skull was only a few millimeters across, and it seems to be closing now. I can show you when we get home. I borrowed the x rays. It turns out the brain wasn't protruding from the skull, so it wasn't a brain hernia after all, just a benign tumor. There were apparently two hard kernels as white as ping pong balls in that lump they cut away. This is one family there's a lot to be grateful for. The professor had been waiting for a lull in the rush of Bird's talk. I don't know. What do you make of that? Does that seem a little like a ghost in the machine, a little bit like, a God in the works kind of thing? I don't know. It's a good book. It's a hard book to read despite its relatively short length because of some of the rawness and the brutality and in the way that this disabled child is talked about. And one thing that is interesting here is if you think about this as dealing with some of the hard decisions that a parent has to make when they realize that their child isn't going to be the dream, that there are going to be some issues, and coming to accept that and coming to love the child and coming to appreciate what that child brings to the world and coming to appreciate the life. Uh, that is what this book is about. And the title, A Personal Matter, is exactly the point that this isn't meant to be a good person or a good thing. This is a very personal thing. This is just, laying it out like it is in all its rawness and all its brutality and all its, you know, there are dreams of the future that you cannot have because of this disabled child. And we have a tendency to live in the dreams that we create. And so stepping back from those dreams and realizing, no, I have to take responsibility for what's here, what's now, and have to, enjoy what I have here and not live in dreams that I can no longer have. That's, we want to say that, oh, how can you? But let's be realistic. Let's be real here. It is not an easy burden when you're expecting, a beautiful child with, as they say, the 10 toes, the 10 fingers, etc., and something else is born than what you expect. How do you deal with that? And realistically, not idealistically, not as an ideal human being, but as a real human being with all your flaws and all your complexes and all your own internal struggles. How do you deal with that? And that's what this book is about in a no holds barred kind of way. Now, I should be clear this is definitely not the experience of every uh, parent of a disabled individual. This is definitely not that experience. But this is an experience, this is an expression, this is a variation of that journey. And personally, I think that, I like this book. There are things I did not care for about the overall craft of it, but the sense of what the story was trying to do, I did appreciate. Um, So I appreciated the rawness. I appreciated the willingness to have Bird, who really is a figure for the author, Kenzaburo Oe, being a very basically dislikable person. I didn't like him at all. And I think that was a very bold choice to make. And it's a very interesting book. All right. Kenzaburo Oe, A Personal Matter. Give it a shot.